Okay, welcome back everybody for another video. This time we're covering the latest update to Master of Command. This one is called Update version 1.02, or sorry, version 1.2.0 Imperial Decree. So I'm just going to be reading through some of the things that are written in the patch notes. I'm going to be going over some of the things that I think are more important. I think there are some things like I don't know. There's always like more customization options and stuff like that that I don't they don't really matter that much to me. I'm going to be covering mostly like the gameplay mechanics, campaign mechanics, etc. The things that really affect the gameplay. Anyway, so let's go ahead and just start reading what Griffin and the team have to say here. It says, "Hey guys, I hope you enjoy our free Holy Roman Empire DLC. The link to download it is here. So this is completely free if you guys weren't aware. So I definitely recommend picking it up. I also highly recommend joining the Discord. They've got a link to their Discord here." He goes on to say, "We only had 2 weeks to work on this entire update, so we unfortunately were unable to fulfill every goal on our roadmap. But rest assured, we'll be back at it in January and we'll continue to work on more updates. There will be a second roadmap for Master of Command released sometime in January. You can probably find that on the Discord. Furthermore, because so many new units were added, 90 in total, which is a 60% increase on the game's total unit count, you can expect some balance issues initially, but we will iron those out early next year. I will also state that December was the last month of overhauls to the game's balancing, so expect quarter one of 2026 to be more focused around fine tuning, bug fixing, AI, and smaller changes/additions. New content additions will take a bit of a backseat for a little bit until everything has been ironed out, as we want to make sure the game is stable and we aren't adding or changing too much too quickly." So, what was the goal of this update? We wanted to address the lack of variety in some of the unit trees. This was a big problem for nations like Russia, where many unit trees felt shallow and disjointed. By adding in several new units for each nation, there should be more types of builds you can create with each army. We wanted a central German state nation, Holy Roman Empire, so that there was more variety in enemies to fight. You'll now often find that a mission that you'd normally fight completely against Austrians may now be a combined Austro-Holy Roman force, which makes the battles more dynamic with troop variety. Players can also play as the Holy Roman Empire, of course, too. We felt like the AI were fielding very predictable army compositions and would play predictably, so we made their army compositions a lot more varied and integrated all of the new units we added to the game, and made their battle behaviors a little more random. We will focus on more AI updates in future months. Number four, and this is a big one, we wanted to slow down combat a little, as in the late game, the unit stats could end up getting so high that battles were a little too decisive. You should notice just a little bit less accuracy and reload skill being given from many of the items and base stats. You'll also notice the melees and charges are a little slower and less decisive. Before, they felt a little arcadey, with some melees ending in just a couple seconds. In January, I'll be taking a look at a lot of the doctrines and balancing them out a bit better as well, improving the lackluster ones and rebalancing the overpowered ones. And lastly, we wanted a way for players who weren't a fan of the roguelike structure to be able to enjoy the game with a long term campaign, especially with Christmas coming up and people having some time off. So we've added the endless campaign mode so you can continue playing your game across 30 acts instead of being limited to 3. So first off here, he's going to be talking about the Holy Roman Empire, aka the HRE. They've been added to the game. You'll need to download it, blah, blah, blah. Here's the national doctrine for the HRE. It's called Imperial Register, and it's a new stance. They get a new stance called mustering, which lets you drum up fresh reservists. There's a small percentage chance you get a free recruit while mustering as well, and this chance is increased if you're close to a settlement. The theme for the HRE is diverse units and luck. And so here you can see all the things that muster is giving you. So you get reservists per regiment per day that you are in the muster stance. You get a 4% chance of raising a free recruit per day. And this goes up to. Okay, here's something that I haven't tested myself. I don't know if this is getting added on to the 4% or if it goes from 4% to 5%. So that part I'm not sure of, but you're more likely to get a free recruit if you're next to a settlement. Uh, and whenever you get the recruit, you get a free point of veterancy per brigade in the army. So if you've got 3 brigades, you're going to muster a recruit that has 3 veterancy. Your army replenishment goes up, campaign visibility goes down, campaign movement speed goes down, and it costs $5 per regiment daily. So what I'm thinking is you want to be doing this early on in the campaign when you don't have very many regiments. That means it's going to be cheaper, um, and you're not going to be shelling out as much money to get a recruit unit. Later on, as the game progresses, especially going into like Act 2 or 3, you probably don't want to be using the muster stance because you're getting a recruit unit, and recruits aren't all that useful later in the game. You really want to be buying better units from towns and stuff. Although I will point out that that can be a little difficult because they get fewer recruitment options at settlements. Okay, so there are 3 new army compositions for the HRE, starting with the Christ contingent. They get a combat effectiveness buff to every or for every unique regiment they field. So the more diverse your army, the stronger they become. So basically, with them, you want to have uh, a wide variety of units so that you're getting combat effectiveness per unique unit. Something else that's worth pointing out is that the you also get combat effectiveness for units in your reserves. They have to be a unique unit, but you can get combat effectiveness for more than just the units that you are fielding in your army. So what I think you want to do is you want to have most of the units you're fielding be like the higher tier like veteran units, and then maybe in the reserve you put like a Saxon recruit, a an Imperial recruit, an Imperial land militia. Those are units that you don't really want to put into battle, but if you have them in the reserve pool of your army, you're going to be getting a half a percentage point of combat effectiveness from them from each individual one. Next up, we got the Saxon Army. Their bonus is that the new mustering stance generates additional reservists per regiment, letting you muster up large amounts of reservists quickly. Their malus is that units must be purchased using reservists, which makes it a little harder to balance your resources. However, you can take advantage of this using the muster stance and build up reservists that way. So let me see if I can expand this. Will this open for me if I click it? Okay, yeah. So here you can see mustering, they get twice as many. Um, but when you go into towns, you're going to have to pay with reservists instead of money. I think that's pretty interesting. I like the idea, and I think the devs had put a note somewhere that um, that the costs. So there is a cost. There's like a taller per I don't know 4 or 5 recruits, something like that. Um, kind of like equation that they have. And basically, I think they said that the Saxons, they're able to buy their units at 70% of the cost that other armies are paying, because the reservists get like a little bit of a discount when you use your money to buy reservists and then use the reservists to buy recruits. So that's kind of interesting. Um, I'll also point out that they have a very high tier cannon in their army, which kind of unexpected, but very cool. Uh, I guess we can also look at the items real quick for the Christ contingent. So they give a lot of restoration. You've got the chaplain, the surgeon, the medicinal herbs. All of these things give casualty restoration after the battle, and then they've got a Sul musket, which is a fairly accurate musket. I think this is the infantry hanger sword. I believe it gives charge and melee attack, and then you have the breastplate, which of course gives melee damage reduction for cavalry. So they're very much they very much want to weather the storm, as in get a bunch of replenishment after battles and minimize the damage that the cavalry has taken. Uh, and it is interesting because the uh, the Imperial units that they field right away, they have very low morale, and they're not very quality oriented units. So this kind of helps. You're going to take a lot of losses. Is what I'm trying to say here. You're going to take a lot of losses with these guys, and these 3 items kind of mitigate those losses that they're taking early on. Moving on. So the last army composition is the Auxiliary Corps. They gain a free weighted HRE unit every time they buy an officer at a settlement. So consider the noble estates to be your casinos, and you can buy officers to see what random unit you're going to get. The malice is that officers and units are 200% more expensive, meaning 3 times the cost, and so you need to rely on finding affordable officers and good luck to get your units. Yeah, so I mean, pretty straightforward here. You're going to be getting free units every time you buy an officer. So you want to go and find those settlements that have cheaper officers and more officer options, and you go in there and you buy officers there in order to get the units that you want, because buying them is going to be more expensive. Here it says 150% more expensive. Here it says 200%. Um, so you don't really want to be buying units from towns. You want to be either buying up officers to get units or going into the muster stance to get recruits. Okay, here they've got the flags, which is great and all, but I'm not going to look at that. Here they've got the imperial tree of the Holy Roman Empire, and then here they've got the Saxon unit tree for the Holy Roman Empire. Just a quick note here. I'll go through and just point out. Can I zoom in anymore? No, I can't. Anyway, you've got your cavalry over here. Pretty straightforward. Your hussars are going to be your light cavalry, better at charging, and then this is going to be the heavy cavalry line going into the cuirassiers that are, of course, better in melee. Over here, the land militia goes into all of the line infantry units, and they all specialize in different things. So the Kreis musketeers and these units in general, they're going to be kind of, it's kind of funny to explain them. They have a lot of units in them. Like I think the Kreis musketeers have I think they have like 1800 men, and then the veteran musketeers I believe are also 1800. Um, the stats are kind of mediocre, but they have a lot of men uh, and low morale. The grenadiers they have fairly decent melee stats. They're not the best melee stats, but they're fairly decent. Um, and you get 1600 of them, so you've got a lot of grenadiers there. The Württemberger musketeers, these guys, um, I actually don't really remember what they were good at. So I apologize. I can't remember what they were good at, but they upgrade into the light infantry. So you want to go with these guys if you want light infantry, and of course you've got some grenadiers over here. I think the Palatine musketeers were good in melee, relatively speaking. So the Palatine grenadiers are going to be your like heavy melee grenadier units, but you only get 1,000, so they're kind of on the smaller side for grenadiers. And the Palatine veteran musketeers, they've got decent accuracy, but they're a little slow on the reload. Strong in melee though. And last, you've got the Bavarian musketeers, and these are your high accuracy, fairly high reload units. So if you like a firing line, the Bavarians are what you want to go for. And the Imperial artillery is kind of like the French artillery in that it ends up being a little bit bigger than your standard artillery, but it's not. It's a little lacking in combat stats. They're not terrible. I think they're still better than the French artillery. Don't quote me on that, but they're pretty much on par with French artillery, maybe slightly better. And then the Saxon tree is a little bit more quality focused. Over here, you've got the three different um, Saxon cavalry, and I believe they go from like these are like your light cavalry. I believe these are like a medium, and then these are your heavy cavalry. Um, so of course, the lightest ones are going to be better at charging. The heavier ones going to be better in melee. The Saxon Tatar cavalry probably a nice middle ground. And if I remember correctly, the Saxon infantry were were fairly good in terms of quality, but they lack the quantity of the imperial units, especially the Kreis units. So I think they tend to have like I think they had like 1,200 men units, and I don't remember what the Grenadiers have, but it's probably 1,000. The Saxon artillery is very good though. So I think if you are going for artillery, you probably want to get Saxon artillery over Imperial artillery. We've got the units of renown here. Very cool. I'm not going to focus on that. Just wanted to show you guys. Here's the new Soul musket that it's apparently has good accuracy, poor melee. Overall, I think it's fairly good. They added endless campaign mode, so if you uh, don't want to just play up through Act 3, if you want to keep going, this is for you. You can play through all 30 regions, which is very cool. Um, you can stack doctrines. Once you have every single doctrine, you can then start earning the doctrines over again and stack them, and you can do the same thing with the difficulty modifiers. We've got some new officer traits as well. Religious, that gives morale, lowers officer death chance. Defensive, which increases combat bonuses from elevation and gives more cover effectiveness. I was seeing somewhere that artillery could very much benefit from this. If you put your artillery on hills a lot, they're going to get an extra 50% accuracy bonus, which is cool. Steady, which gives extra melee and extra charge. Tactical increases your flanking damage, increases your flanking damage, but also increases the flanking damage that you receive. And lastly, fire vigilant, which reduces your fire damage received but decreases your stamina. Next up here, we have the 3 unique doctrines for the HRE. Polish Saxon Union, which increases light cavalry combat effectiveness by plus 10%. German arms production decreases musket and carbine costs. And lastly, the Romer Monate. Romer Monate? I don't know. This thing, the HRE tax, which you get 6 reservists and 6 ammunition daily, but you have to pay up $2 for it. And then we've had some updates to all of the unit trees, all of the rosters in the game. So here's the new British tree. As you can see, they added in the veteran foot, the dragoon guards. I think the foot guards, are the foot guards new? Yeah, they are. The foot guards are new. I'm not going to go through all of these trees, but they're pretty neat. It's pretty cool that they added more units. Oh, the Russian one is kind of important because originally the Russian tree was divided up into like I think 5 different trees. You had your like Russian infantry, and then you had the Russian cavalry, and then Russian artillery that were all 3 separate trees. And then on top of that, you had the Cossacks and the observation trees. And it was kind of a mess. So what they did was they consolidated the Russian units together. So now you see your surf recruits can go into artillery, they can go into cavalry, they can go into infantry. Cossacks got a nice expansion, observation units as well. Got the Austrians, and I can't click and open this, so that's kind of why I'm not doing that. Hungarians got a couple of added units, as did the Grinzers, just the veteran Fusilier unit. Here are the Prussians. They've got these converged Fusiliers, which is just a really big Fusilier unit. It's kind of interesting. And then the Freikorps got a few more units. So you got Freikorps Field Artillery, Freikorps Veteran Musketeers, Freikorps Veteran Jaegers. All very cool. And a Veteran Hussar. There were some army composition changes. So this part here is just talking about changing the descriptions, but I'll go ahead and run through really quickly how the items or the army compositions change themselves. So Freikorps sturdy shoes were upgraded to good quality, captured flag upgraded to excellent quality, So now this unit will move a little bit faster that gets these shoes, and you can sell those for a little bit more money. Light Core Half Gators item upgraded to good quality. Okay, they'll move a little faster. Nice. Added good iron skull caps to the French House of the King. It's a new item and reduces melee damage, which is fitting for them. Also upgraded their medicinal herbs to good quality. So this is a very interesting item set because you've got the breastplate, the skull cap, and the heavy saddle, which all reduce melee damage, and then the medicinal herbs, which give casualty restorations. So basically, if you gave these three items plus the medicinal herbs to like your cavalry unit, I mean, they it's going to reduce the amount of manpower that they need to replenish every battle. So that's kind of cool. Russian Cossack contingent now starts with one of the new units, a Cossack Plastin light infantry. You can keep him as a Plastin and upgrade him, or Plastoon. Is it maybe it's Plastoon? I don't know. And upgrade him into a dismounted Cossack who has decent light infantry stats, or upgrade him into a regular Cossack unit. While I like the Cossacks all mounted start, they remain one of the least popular army compositions, and so hopefully this gives them a little more opportunity to play into a different strategy early on. Excellent lances added to the Russian Cossack composition. Lances are fitting for the Cossacks, and their worn uniform item has been changed to excellent quality. So the lance, what that does is it increases charge damage, but reduces melee damage by a little bit. So you want to get in, hit them with this until your charge meter runs out, and then maybe take them out, or just rely on that charge damage to break a unit. French Lower Rhine army now starts with good spirits instead of basic, and then they say we use basic spirits on a bunch of other compositions, so we wanted one to have good spirits. British Expeditions light saddle downgraded to good quality instead of excellent. A good quality basket hilt hanger sword has been added to their starting items. Ideally, it should be used by the Highlanders, and that is because it increases charge damage, but I believe it reduces accuracy. So you want to put it on a unit that maybe they take one shot and they charge in, or they just don't shoot at all. Hanoverian Corps' Hanoverian Horse upgraded to excellent quality. They had no excellent items and no high tier units. Austria's Crownland Corps battalion gun upgraded to a field gun. So that's this artillery unit here. They were originally battalion artillery, now they're field artillery. Next, Russia's Imperial Army 2nd Brigade now contains one reserve musketeer instead of two serf musketeers. Their starting musketeer has also been upgraded to a grenadier. Their basic spirits replaced with excellent spirits. They had no excellent items, and we haven't given any composition excellent spirits to start with. Their starting officer's trait has been replaced with religious. Russia's Observation Corps Engineer upgraded to good quality instead of basic. They only have 3 units and no excellent items. Last patch also had debuffed all the items that provided range buffs, so the engineer isn't as strong as he once was. Their officer's explosive trait has been replaced with defensive, which boosts cover and elevation bonuses, which is very helpful for your artillery. So I mentioned that earlier, and it must have been because I read it here earlier when I was skimming through the patch notes. So there you go. It's probably going to be decent on an artillery officer. Next, we've got the reroll feature. I think this is really neat. You can now reroll the regions for mission selection in the campaign. This means you don't have to restart the game over and over to get a good renowned unit or doctrine option. Rerolling doesn't cost anything for the first mission of a new campaign. You can do it as many times as you want. In all subsequent regions, though, the first reroll is cheap but begins costing more with each additional reroll. And so you can do the same thing with officer traits. And I think it starts out at $50 and then goes up to 100. And then I don't know what it goes to after that. Probably 150 or 200. Lastly, or I should say, next up, we've got artillery changes. Artillery receives 25% less morale damage from muskets, so you can more comfortably have some frontline artillery able to support with canister. Fix an artillery bug. Okay. All artillery costs are now 20% cheaper, so the most expensive gun is a clean $1,500 now instead of $1,875. A bronze 12-pound gun will cost you $800 now instead of $1,000. Bronze cannons and special cannons now consume slightly less ammunition. They previously received a large ammo consumption malus. Also stated under the unit changes, but I generally made all the artillery units cheaper because the actual artillery piece and item upgrades is primarily what makes artillery effective. The unit by itself isn't very good, so it didn't make sense to make it so expensive or difficult for the player to acquire even a basic battalion artillery unit. So I like this change because I felt like it was in my Hanoverian campaign, it was very punishing to try to bring your artillery up into canister range, especially with the changes that were made to canister, where they were given reduced range, and also their damage was nerfed a little bit. Um, so now they're a little less vulnerable. Apparently, I I probably still will not be putting my artillery into canister range or in a position where they can get shot at, just because uh, I had a bad experience with that in my Hanoverian campaign, and the developers did recently change canister shot again, and we'll get to it in the patch notes. So canister should be more effective now than it was in the previous update, but I haven't tested it myself to see if that risk is worth the reward at this point. Next, we've got cavalry changes. This is kind of big, so uh, pay attention here. Light cavalry has had another manpower buff. The average hussar is now 800 strong instead of 500. This is a pretty massive change, so we've compensated by doing the following: compensated for the cavalry size increases by removing a lot of the cheat stats cavalry previously received. We've had modifiers that reduce cavalry fire and morale damage by up to 10 to 35% in some cases because cavalry is so small that they'd be crushed by infantry with similar stats just because they're in some cases one third the size. Because the cavalry sizes have been increased, a lot of those cheats have been dialed down massively. So cavalry morale damage received, it was a negative 35% modifier. Now it's at 0%. Cavalry fire damage received was had a negative 30% modifier. Now it's negative 20%. And then cavalry fire morale damage received was at negative 10%, and it's still at negative 10%. Cavalry receiving less fire damage seems counterintuitive since the target is larger, but because of their small size, it's very easy for them to get shredded up. I think it also makes sense that the fire damage is reduced slightly since cavalry is often on the move, and it's far harder to hit a moving target of cavalry compared to a giant line of infantry. All cavalry sprints at +5 faster. Their walk speed is unchanged. This should help them in the early game to outflank enemies, and even in the late game, since it's harder to flank, it should at least let you get your cavalry in to exploit a breakthrough faster. Heavy cavalry will most noticeably benefit from this. All light cavalry has had their morale reduced by 5 to 10, and their melee by 5. This is to compensate for their increased hit points. The nice thing about this is it means that vanilla light cavalry, no upgrades and items, will feel a little more fragile in the early game, but in the late game, once you have stacked items onto them, they should become a lot more powerful due to their large manpower size. Currently, most players, about 79% of respondents, have felt that light cavalry is too powerful early game, but becomes useless late game because they have had excellent stats but small numbers, which meant that by the time you get to Act 3, there isn't much room to maneuver, and a single powerful volley from an enemy with buff stats will decimate you. The lowered stats but higher numbers should mean that earlier on it's a little easier to deal with cavalry threats, but late game they can keep up better with the infantry and artillery. Fixed a bug with cavalry that stopped them from reloading their carbines if they were recently in melees. So yeah, light cavalry, they're gonna be a lot bigger. They're going to be they're going to be less dangerous in melee, but you really need to watch out for them on the charge. Uh, we're going to come up on this in the patch notes later on, but uh, if you get hit in the rear by cavalry, you're going to have a bad day, and I experienced that in my Hanoverian campaign a lot. So don't sleep on the light cavalry. Um, some of this is a nerf to them, but the increased unit size and the changes to the way that charges work, especially in the rear, um, light cavalry is going to be dangerous. Um, okay, let's go over some of the interesting campaign changes. Updated the regions to contain the HRE faction. They are commonly found in any of the German regions, but can occasionally be found spilling into neighboring regions. New conditions can appear at settlements. There's a positive one called auxiliary recruitment, and a negative opposite one called disarmed settlement. Auxiliary, oh my gosh, why am I struggling so much? Auxiliary recruitment, auxiliary, there we go. Auxiliary recruitment means that the barracks at the location contains only units local to that area, i.e., finding English troops in England while playing as France. This was added since the HRE was added in as a nation. I figured it would be interesting to be able to pick up some local German troops if you were campaigning in the Rhine or Bavaria, for example. The disarmed settlement means that the settlement has far fewer units to recruit. They fixed a bug, fixed encounters so they can no longer spawn on top of the enemy HQ. Yeah, that would be very annoying. They fixed inventory sort buttons. Here's a couple of very interesting ones. The Scorched Earth region resource availability malice is now negative 20% instead of negative 25%. Just wanted to make it slightly less punishing. Disbanding a regiment now fully refunds you its reservists, ammunition, and items. This is good because in my last campaign, I had gotten a couple of land milits units for free, and I took out as many reservists as I could, but there were still about 200 reservists in the unit that I couldn't take out, and so I disbanded the unit, but I didn't get those reservists. So I'm glad that they're changing this so that you will get those reservists if you disband the unit. Field armies are now more common. There was a bug that would push them into around day 160 if you were actively fighting patrols, but oftentimes the HQ is ready by that time, and field armies aren't allowed to spawn when the HQ is active. This is good. In my Hanoverian playthrough, I did feel like, especially in Act 3, I don't know that I fought. I don't know that I fought a single field army. Maybe, possibly, I fought one, but I felt like field armies were really lacking, and I didn't know what that was about. Honestly, I think there should be more field armies. I feel like I only find one or two, and I would love to be finding like three in an act. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Slightly increase the ammo reward for prisoners since ammo consumption is now slightly higher. The multi-front conflict modifier now makes officers and units plus 35% more expensive rather than just units. Okay, you can now zoom out in the unit trees to see them. Cool. Retreating from a battle only causes 10% attrition instead of 20%. And an enemy you retreat from will be stun locked for 10 seconds instead of 5 seconds. So now retreating is a little bit of a better option if you, let's say you do run into a field army and you're not ready for it. Retreating isn't going to hurt you so bad. Here we go. Here's a change to bracing and charges. Bracing only works at 10% efficiency in rear charges. To compensate for this, I slightly reduced the charge impact damage on rear charges. The end result, though, is that rear charging is far more powerful still. Yeah, so just looking at this. Let's look at what he says down here. In the old rear charge, the Hussars suffered 108 casualties and inflicted 243 before the infantry was broken. In the newest rear charge, the Hussars suffer 33 casualties and inflict 192 before the infantry is broken. So basically, you're going to be inflicting a little less damage, but look at that, you're taking way fewer casualties. So uh, so rear charges going to be very strong. Bracing is lost about 20% faster when you're moving. Free fire no longer gets a negative 50% penalty to dealing morale damage, it's now negative 35%. The reason the morale damage penalty exists is to make volley fire more devastating since a unit is receiving many casualties suddenly. This change should make morale damage dealt by light infantry more effective as they rely on fire at will. Light infantry has their formations back, they can fight in close order and open order, but we now made it so when they exit and enter open order, it resets their bracing, which solves the exploit regarding changing into close order right before a charge is received. Light infantry take a less extreme penalty when being charged. They previously received a 2.5 times increase in damage from charges, now it's 2 times instead. Should make them a little easier to manage. Minor improvements to melee, specifically when trying to target a unit that is running away who you're already engaged in melee with. I like this. Really annoying when you're in melee with a unit and it starts to rout and you struggle to run it down. So I'm glad that they're trying to fix that and make it better. This is an important one. Melees have been made about 5 times longer by slowing down the HP damage dealt over time. This gives you more time to respond if a unit is charged. If you've seen the first episode of my HRE campaign, you'll see that, yeah, melee is a lot slower than it used to be, which is good when I'm getting charged. I like being able to respond to it, but it kind of stinks when you charge into a unit and you want to hurry up and break that unit so that you can get into the next one. Charge HP damage reduced by negative 25%. Charge resistance, damage dealt to the charging unit, reduced by negative 25%. Charging consumes less stamina. It's going to consume 10 stamina instead of 15. I like that change. Charging was the stamina hit you took when charging was painful. Melees consume negative 20% less stamina since they last longer. Combat effectiveness bug fixed. Okay. All units now move 20% faster. Everything should be feeling more responsive. All cavalry now walks a little slower but sprints faster. Here we go, ammunition changes. This is a fairly big one. Ammunition types like canister, buckshot, etc. now has an ammunition consumption penalty parameter. This means I can make the ammo types have less of a range penalty and make the penalty more about the ammunition consumption. For example, canister shot was super difficult to use because it hurt your range so badly you'd risk you losing your artillery. That's what I mentioned before. In my Hanoverian campaign, I lost at least 2 artillery batteries, maybe 3. Because I had to have them up so close in the fighting. Now the range reduction isn't so extreme, but it burns through ammo quicker, so you will do more damage than with solid shot, but you can't afford to keep the artillery piece using canister for the entire duration of battle unless you've got an excellent limber chest. And then we're going to go into the infantry ammunition types. Buckshot now only reduces range by minus 35% instead of minus 55%. Its damage has been reduced from damage was reduced by 5 at all levels. Ammo consumption increases by plus 20% when it's being used. Buck and Ball now only reduced range by 15% instead of 35%. Its damage has been unaffected. Its ammo consumption is up 40% though. And lastly, Quartered Shot now actually increases range by 10% instead of reducing by 25%. But its damage has been changed, minus 5 at every level. The ammo consumption penalty is highest here since it's receiving 2 buffs and no debuff. So you will go through ammunition 60% faster. Cartridge boxes got buffed, which you'll see under the item change section, and so they can now reduce ammo consumption by 60%. This makes an excellent quality large cartridge box very attractive if you want to build a light infantry unit with Quartered Shot as a sniper. I may change Quartered Shot later on to actually reduce accuracy but provide further range, but I wanted to try out an ammo type that is like a premium round and see if it's any fun at first. So I think this makes the infantry ammo types more viable because the range isn't being reduced by as much. I felt like for a while range was so important on infantry because if some guy walked up to you and he had like an excellent Jaeger rifle and you were using, I don't know, a basic Potsdam, that dude was shooting you from I don't know, like 30 or 40 extra range, and you had to walk up a lot in order to be able to hit him. And so if you were using these ammunition types, you're having your range reduced by quite a bit, and it just didn't seem worth it, right? Unless you had a unit that you were very specifically using to get around on the flank, and then you could switch to this ammo type and then just like unload in the flank of a unit. I see these being much more viable uh, in on like a line infantry unit. Um, there have been some unit changes here. Some of the more important ones are higher tier light infantry now come with socket bayonets as opposed to worn bayonets. All battalion artillery units are priced 100 cheaper. There is some unit balance here. I'll click on this for a minute so you guys can take a look. Feel free to pause if you want to. I'm not going to be going through this to talk about what units were buffed, what units were nerfed. Just take a look here. This is the Austrians. Here are the Russians. The British. The French. And here are the HRE unit stats. Okay. Terrain changes. This is important. We've heard a lot of feedback about terrain not impacting the game as much as it should. Unfortunately, there are a lot of limitations with our battle engine, which means things like impassable terrain will never come, and true 3D hills won't either. But it's definitely something on our priority list for a future title. That said, we thought at the very least we could make the existing terrain a little more strategically impactful with the addition of a stamina modifier. Rivers now reduce your stamina by 0.5 per second. Your idle stamina regain rate is normally plus 0.5, so this means you don't regain stamina in a river. If you sprint or reload while in a river, you'll also drain your stamina quickly. Marshes reduce stamina by 0.25 per second. Buildings reduce stamina by 0.1 per second. Forests reduce stamina by 0.15 per second. Also minor, but your troops will get very slightly worn out faster if sprinting through a large forest or firing in there for a prolonged period. And as aforementioned, your idle regain rate is plus 0.5, so you won't get tired just from sitting or walking in a forest. Hedges only reduce movement by 15% instead of 25. Um, Roads now provide a passive plus zero point 0.2 positive stamina gain. This means sprinting on roads is far less exhausting. Um, it also means if you leave a unit on a road, it will regain stamina faster. This makes roads not only more strategically important for maneuver, but for combat. It's even more beneficial if you find a road flanked by hedges, so that you've got cover and stamina regeneration. Hills now provide 30% cover instead of 20%. In a future quality of life update, we plan on revealing all of this terrain data for you. Just gives us a little time. Just give us a little time and we'll make something soon. I personally am not a huge fan of the stamina reduction for some of these things. I think it sounds good on paper, but in game, I feel like I've had units where they can't build up their stamina. Like they'll just be standing there, and their stamina isn't increasing, and so I'm not sure if I mean I think it's a bug, but I'm not sure if that's like I'm not sure if that bug is related to the stamina drain or if it's related to units somehow like getting broken and having their regain rate damaged or broken so that they're just stuck at zero stamina or they're stuck losing stamina even if they're literally standing still. Um, Again, I like it on paper, but I think that the game mechanics, the game code as of right now, I'm not sure if it can handle this super well. Item changes. Bayonets have been fixed. They say minus 10 accuracy, minus 10 reload on their tooltip, which is inaccurate. It's a percentage reduction, but I'm not a fan of using percentages. Blah, 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 blah. We've now changed it so that accuracy and reload malices are additive instead of multipliers. So now a worn bayonet reduces accuracy by 2 and reload by 2 instead of by negative 10% accuracy and 10% reload. Finally, the accuracy and reload reduction bayonets give is now shown directly on your camp stats, so your stats at camp are more accurate going into battle. Here's some important changes. All muskets now take an additional 4 seconds to fire. Carbines take an additional 3. I was finding it far too easy to stack items to get reload time down to unrealistic times. I don't mind the realism breaking if a player min-maxes every possible reload buff, but there were cases of units reaching 3-second reload times with just a handful of decent items. So here we go, base musket and carbine accuracy also reduced by 4 on muskets, 2 on carbines. In addition to the aforementioned reload buff, this was done because we're adding in so many new units to the game. Many of the new units are veteran or guard variants. I do not want the skill ceiling to be raised much higher, and so this is a slight form of compensation for additional unit tiers being added, especially many veteran musketeer units being added, such as veteran Irish, Swiss, Hessian, Hanoverian, etc. All carbines now have cleaner ranges. Instead of a standard musket having 125 range and a carbine with range proficiency having 93.6 range, it is simply 95. That's a good change. I like that rounding. Delft muskets are no longer poor at charging. So there you go. A little buff to the Delft muskets, which I don't mind because I feel like the Delft muskets have been lackluster, so I like giving them a little buff. The Jönköping muskets no longer suffer from poor range. They've got a teeny bit of a range buff there. Tula musket no longer has such bad range, but still below the average, so they got buffed to 120. Marksman now reduces reload by 2, but it provides 2 less accuracy per tier. Tobacco only reduces stamina by 2 now. Coffee no longer increases move speed up to 6 by the highest tier. Its secondary effect is now a constant flat +4. Tea no longer increases reload up to 6 by the highest tier. Its secondary effect is now a constant +4. And the accuracy went down by 2 at each tier, making it a tougher choice between it and tobacco. Cheese no longer increases stamina by up to 6. Its secondary effect is now a constant +4. Beer secondary effect morale is a flat +4. All cartridge boxes had a buff to have 5% more ammo reduction. Effective range on muskets has been reduced from 50 meters to 40. So this means you're gonna have to be getting up closer to do your maximum damage with the muskets. This makes it a little harder to get such high kills firing at your maximum range, which is exploitable in the late game when your base accuracy is so high that a max range volley can be too devastating. Gun picks got nerfed. They're down to reload at every tier. The freeload treatise got nerfed. It's down to reload at every tier. Infantry ramrods got nerfed. They're down to reload at every tier, as are cylindrical ramrods. Let's see. Heavy saddles reduce melee damage. Instead of giving melee damage, the surgeon got buffed. It's up 5% at every tier with the casualty restoration rate. The weapon tooltip was improved. I like this. It now shows you on both sides like what each weapon is good at, so that's cool. There were some changes to musket stats here, which I haven't taken a look at, but this would be good to look at some point just to see kind of how things ended up. There were some uniform changes. I'm not going to go into that. I'm not too fussy about that. Here's some cool mods that the developers like. So that's neat. I really like the idea of Spain being in the game, so I might check out the Spain mod at some point. I think that's really cool. Modding changes, visual changes. That might be it. Okay, so there's some AI changes, and that might be the last thing to look at. And then we'll read the conclusion. So AI changes, basically they didn't do a whole lot of changes to the AI, but here's some of the more pertinent ones. AI bug fix, where if you ran around a unit frequently enough with cavalry, sometimes they would freeze for the remainder of the battle. So that seems like that's been fixed. There's now more randomness to the AI infantry charges. They should be less predictable, more randomness to the AI defensive stance. AI should break defensive stance sooner if you advance on them. There were cases where you would fire at AI infantry, but they wouldn't return fire and instead remained in defensive stance. Um, we also added randomness to it so that sometimes they break from defensive stance sooner than other times. AI, this is interesting. AI will now counter battery fire if you begin firing at their artillery with yours. AI is less likely to flick their regiment around when you're about to make contact with a rear charge. I've still seen the AI doing this in my HRE campaign. I feel like they are. I feel like there's a 50-50% chance that they will try to turn around and shoot me or something if I rear charge them. And it also seems like their bracing doesn't go down when they turn around to do that. I'm gonna need to check that and make sure that I'm correct. But if they're able to turn around and preserve their bracing, I don't think that's right. I think that needs to be taken away. Um, okay. And then they made some changes here to the AI army compositions. I'm not going to go into detail there. And let's go ahead and read the conclusion here. That's it for the Imperial Decree update. We've fulfilled every promise for November and December so far, with the exception of adding some new battle maps. I, Griffin, am in charge of balancing and design as well as map creation, and unfortunately I couldn't balance doing both in the little time we had to add in the HRE. That said, we did over deliver on the new units, which should make up for it. Instead of 4 new units per nation, 20 total, we added a total of 34 to the 5 base nations. We also gave the HRE 40 units instead of the 38 we said we would. Thank you so much for supporting the game. The free DLC was the least we could do for all the support you've given us and very kind reviews. We are now going to take our first time off since the release of the game, and will return in January. This does unfortunately mean that there won't be any hotfixes past Friday, December 19th. If there is part of this update you don't enjoy or a bug, we've made sure to add the old build of the game for you to opt into, so you don't need to play with this new update. Thanks so much again, guys, and happy holidays. Um, and then there were some. Let's see. They did do another mini patch here just to fix some bugs and make a couple more changes. So I might look at this for a second as well. So let's see. Campaign changes. Amount of ammunition typically stored by settlements was increased. Cool. Increase the amount of ammunition gained when buying ammunition from costing 50 to receive 150 per purchase to costing 50 to receive 200. So you can think of this as one taller will now buy you 4 ammunition instead of one taller getting you 3. Um, and then same sort of thing for the food, where one taller now buys you 2 food instead of it only getting you 1.66 food. And then they reduced the food gain from prisoner exchange, or no, they increased it a little bit, increased food gain and decreased ammo gain. Battalion artillery, now less commonly found in Act 2 compared to field artillery. Saxon recruits are slightly more common in Acts 1 and 2 compared to Imperial recruits. Some of the units here got buffed by having their veterancy costs reduced. So Swiss veteran, Fusiliers and Grenadiers, their cost is down by 1. Netherland artillery upgrade reduced by 1. French Hussar down by 1. Freikorps Hussar down by 1. Let's see. This is where the lances were given the melee debuff instead of debuffing accuracy, and then cavalry pistols got a slight accuracy debuff, but the price was reduced slightly as well. And here's one: solid shot versus cavalry damage increased by about 15%. So I think this is talking about your artillery. So artillery should do a little bit more damage against cavalry. And with that, we've gone through all the patch notes. So the really the big things here are The HRE was added, very cool. Um, the cavalry change, artillery, there were some small changes, but the cavalry changes were pretty big, especially for the light cavalry, and the bracing changes also affect this a little bit. And what's another what's another one that I wanted to go over? The ammunition changes are fairly significant, as well as um, the terrain changes are important, as are the battle changes where units are reloading slower, their accuracy is lower, melee takes longer. So basically, you should be expecting more prolonged battles because units load slower, they are less accurate, they get into melee, and the melee goes on forever. Expect longer battles. All things to take into consideration, which I feel like I'm pretty neutral on that. I feel like I don't feel one way or the other. The only thing that might be a little annoying is you might see units running out of ammunition more often, especially in the early game because they are less accurate, right? They're less accurate, and uh, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that muskets would consume a little bit more ammunition. Let's see. Looking for it. I'm not seeing it here, but I'm fairly certain there was a patch note or some. Maybe it didn't make it in the game. I don't know, but I thought there was one where muskets were going to be using like 15% more ammunition across the board, and if you pair that extra ammunition consumption with less accuracy, you're going to see units running out of ammunition, and once they're out of ammo, you're going to have to throw them into melee. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I think I think those are all my thoughts. I do like this change to um, the musket and carbine ammunition. I feel like it makes it a little bit more viable. I would certainly like to try to equip some of these ammunitions. Um, you'll need a you'll need a cartridge box in order to reduce that ammunition consumption, but I think that's cool. Oh, they didn't talk about they didn't talk about too much the ammunition consumption on canister, but the ammunition consumption for artillery ammunition types is really high. I think for canister it's like plus 150% ammunition consumption. I think double canister was 200, and then grape shot was like plus 250%. So if you give canister to your artillery and you let them use it, they are going to burn through their ammunition pretty quickly. So you're going to need to give them a limber chest or something. Anyway, I've been talking for a while. These are the patch notes. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you have a comment, if you feel like there's something I didn't cover or go into detail on, and you feel like you want to talk about that a little bit more or expand on that, go for it. Please leave a comment. I appreciate you guys watching. If you like the video, please leave a like, subscribe. I appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, everyone.